As we continue to advocate for all these unsolved cases, the details about the people that we advocate for are not lost on us. We try our best to find out and memorialize all these people as they were in life, and not distinguish them solely based on how they lost their life. In this overview today, we're going to tell you about a lovely woman who tragically lost her life in a brutal way. All that knew her described her as a sweet and kind woman who had no enemies and would never hurt anyone. She did not deserve this. She deserves justice. Please come forward if you know something.
Hello and welcome to Invisible Tears. I'm Jane, and today I'm here with my co-host Amanda. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Jane. How's it going today?
It's going really good. The subject matter today that we're doing, we've had people actually approach us to start advocating for her. Yes. Sylvia Gray.
Mm-hmm.
We had a hard time at first finding information. We were like, okay, if we do this, we've got like this much, like an inch of or 5 sentences to talk about Sylvia Gray. But then you did an amazing job digging into her story and what happened to her and everything. So today, I'm glad that we're going to be covering Sylvia Gray. We haven't heard a whole lot about her except that her murder is still unsolved.
Yes. Yep.
Sadly. And there hasn't been any real person of interest or suspects. So
nope.
Let's get into it.
All right. So yeah, I certainly can credit newspapers.com for having the amazing database that they have, because that's how we were able to compile so much information and help advocate for Sylvia.
Yes, definitely.
So 76-year-old Sylvia E. Gray died Friday, May 28th, 1982. Her funeral was Friday, June 4th at the Plainfield Community Church in Plainfield, New Hampshire, where she served as a deacon and was a member of the Ladies' Aid of the church. She lived in Plainfield. She was born on July 15th, 1905 in International Falls, Minnesota, the daughter of Edward and Eunice Stickney Waite Jr. She graduated from Kimball Union Academy, and in 1924, she married her husband, Harvey Gray. She would reside in Plainfield with her husband until he passed Thursday, July 28th of 1977. Sylvia was employed by the Cone Automatic Machine Company of Windsor, Vermont for several years before retiring. And after marrying her husband, she essentially lived in Plainfield her whole life, but did spend winters in Florida. All that knew her described her as a nice and sweet woman. She was extremely visible and involved in her community. She had no enemies. One community member that was interviewed for an article that I found described her as, quote, a polished diamond.
I absolutely love that description.
Me too.
Like, oh my God, I never heard someone describe someone like that. I love it. Loved it.
Me too. And the further quotes and further description from the people in the community that knew her, it's a perfect description, I think. Even her neighbor said she was nice, she was thoughtful, she was a pleasure. She talked with her all the time. Nancy Norwalk, the Plainfield librarian, described her as polite and proper. She was from the old school, she said, and a direct quote from her said that she was one of those older ladies that always wore gloves.
I can so picture that.
Me too.
So picture that.
I'm like, oh, how cute.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have had a tea party with her.
Right. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
William McHugh, the Plainfield postmaster, remembered her as quite a lady, and said she would come into the post office every day, get her mail, and was always pleasant to talk to. He was quoted as stating she would never hurt anyone.
Mm.
I know.
This case really rattled the small 1,700 person town, very small town.
Yes.
It still is very small. Really hasn't grown. So there must be a lot of farmland or fields and stuff. Nothing like that had happened before, and it really changed the way people thought and acted. People started locking their doors. Older members of town told papers that they no longer leave their wives alone at night. They would have family members come stay with them if they had to be out. So here's the best we know about what happened to Sylvia. The time frame for when Sylvia was attacked and murdered has been narrowed down to between 4 and 6 p.m. on a Friday, May 28th, 1982. So that's daytime. That's not nighttime. That's daytime.
Yes, it was still light out.
The postmaster, William McHugh, remembers Sylvia coming in to get her mail, and it was after 3 p.m. He remembers that because she went to the bank afterwards that is located in the same plaza. On Fridays, the bank did not open until 3 p.m., which is weird. That's kind of odd, but
I know. Small town.
yeah,
Weird
small
hours.
town.
Yep.
We're talking in the 80s.
Yep.
Sylvia's sister, Christine Dow of Claremont, and another woman, a friend of theirs, met for tea later in the afternoon on Friday at Sylvia's home, which was a white cape on Daniels Road in Plainfield. It was located close to town. A jogger who was later identified as a student minister named Joseph Wadsworth remembers seeing Sylvia walking on the road late that afternoon. He was the last person police could establish to have actually seen her alive.
Yeah. Yep. And so on Sunday morning, 2 days later, Paul and Hazel Amadon. So Hazel is Sylvia's cousin. Paul is Hazel's husband. They were getting ready for church when Sophie Morse, who was Sylvia's neighbor, gave them a call. And she told them that she was concerned about Sylvia because she hadn't seen her or heard from her. Now, mind you, remember what I said about she was a nice neighbor. They talked all the time. So this was odd. Obviously, with Sylvia being so involved with the church too, they're like, wait a minute, where's Sylvia?
Yeah, because we're getting into the weekend now.
Right. Yep. So they're getting ready for church and they're like, wait a minute, where's Sylvia? So Paul ended up calling Christine, Sylvia's sister, to see if Sylvia was with her. And when he found out that she wasn't with her, and Christine actually told him it was weird that he was asking because she was trying to get a hold of her sister all day on Saturday and wasn't successful. And that was really odd. They talked all the time. And if they went anywhere, they always told each other where they were going.
Yeah.
So Paul ended up going to Sylvia's house to check on her and met up with Christine there. When they got there, the house was unlocked and the alarm was not set, which was extremely odd. Her son ended up telling newspapers that piece was very weird and alarming because she even set her house alarm when she was going outside to garden in her own yard.
Ew.
Yeah. Richard, her son, had actually gotten her that alarm system and gotten it installed for her a year earlier because his mom's house had been broken into when she wasn't home.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. No one was ever arrested for that break-in. They never found out who did it. And authorities indicated that they were doubtful that there was any sort of connection to the prior break-in and her murder. But still, a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coincidence, and we don't believe in coincidences.
No, we don't. No, we don't. But we really don't have too much details on it. So
Yeah.
So when Paul and Christine went inside the house, they saw dirty teacups and saucers from the Friday afternoon tea party, which again was extremely odd for Sylvia, as she was extremely neat. She kept her house tidy. So she would have cleaned it up right afterwards. There were also no signs of her beginning to make herself dinner, which more solidified the timeline of when she was.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. That makes sense.
Yep. So they started searching the house, did not find her, didn't see any signs of her. And then they both went outside. Christine started walking up the road, and Paul started searching the backyard going into the tree line. Apparently, there were like paths and stuff like that in her tree line. Unfortunately, Christine, her sister, was the one that found Sylvia.
Mm.
She was about 200 yards from her home in an abandoned cellar hole just off the side of the road. She was found lying face down with her hands behind her back. She was wearing a sweater and a dress with one shoe missing that was later found nearby. Christine, under instinct, went to go touch her sister and see if she was okay, and told Paul she felt cold and asked Paul to check her, and he just refused. Like he knew, and just helped her back to the, road and helped her back to her sister's home where they would call police. He didn't want to compromise anything further, and he didn't. Yeah.
So finding her with only one shoe on,
mm-hmm.
and finding the other one nearby, that kind of tells me she was running from her assailant.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would picture, is for her to lose one shoe, she was running from her assailant, or she was dragged.
Yep.
And brought in. I mean, did she go into that abandoned cellar hole willingly, or was she hiding in there, or did they put her in there?
Yeah, I don't know. And even though I was able to find a wealth of articles and information, police and authorities have never released where they think that she was killed. They don't know if she was killed in the location where she was found, or if she was killed within her home. Yeah. So I'm sure they have more specifics about the scenes that they've collected, but they've never released any of that information publicly.
Yeah. Okay.
So unfortunately, we do not know. So the autopsy was performed in Claremont by Dr. Bruce Lewis. And while the exact cause of death and time frame weren't confirmed, the authorities did say that Sylvia had died from a number of blows to the head with some sort of object. Now, that object has never been recovered, and it hasn't been determined what that object actually is. Law enforcement also confirmed that she was stabbed in the chest multiple times.
Ugh, that poor lady.
I know.
It sounds, to me, it sounds like such a personal attack.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone that had a lot of rage.
Yeah.
A lot of rage.
Yeah. It does. And there's another piece that I'll get into here real quick too, because she had a ring that was missing from her finger too. So whether personal, whether robbery, whether I don't know, but that was another piece of the puzzle that they did publicly put out there. But I actually only found that quote in one article that I looked up that actually said that she did have a ring missing from her finger.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So in the following days and weeks that followed, local and state police worked the case basically around the clock, right? This case shook this town. Like you were saying earlier, Jane, it changed the way people thought. It changed, people started actually locking their doors. A super small town, early 80s. This stuff isn't supposed to happen, right?
Exactly.
They set up roadblocks and they started checking all the cars coming and going from town. So everybody in town remembers that too, because nothing like that had ever happened, right? Roadblocks, checking cars, seeing who people were. They also
now, I just want to make one little comment.
Mm-hmm.
She lived on Daniels Road.
Yes.
And that is a road right off of Route 12A, which Route 12A is a pretty major road
Yep.
in New Hampshire.
Yep.
So I just wanted to bring that up. And that road, Daniels Road, is, I think I counted 8 or 9 houses on that road. So it's not, it's a, a fairly short road. And all the houses were right off Route 12A, because if you go past the 8 or 9 houses, then there's nothing to the end of the road. It must be fields or something like that. But that's what I noticed on the map when I map quested it.
That's actually a really good point. It's close proximity to Route 12A.
Yes.
Yep. Very good point. So yeah, even after conducting the house-to-house interviews, see if anybody saw anything, anybody knew anything. Officers also dressed in plain clothes to attend her funeral, to case for potential suspects there. All they really knew was a pretty good timeline based off of circumstantial things, right?
Yeah.
The witness that had last seen, the jogger that had last seen her on the road, sort of the timing of, the teacups being left out, dinner not being started, that sort of thing. So that's really all they knew, was a good, sort of timeline. They were unsure as to whether there was more than one person involved or not.
Yeah.
And I believe it was her son who actually said that he thought that it was actually more than one person. So robbery gone wrong. I have no clue, and certainly don't want to, I think the only piece that brings me back to a possible robbery is that ring.
That ring.
Unless it was, personal for some reason.
But let's not forget,
Trophies.
some killers want to keep trophies.
Yep.
We cannot forget that.
Great point, Jane.
Yeah.
Yes. The second you said, but trophies popped into my brain. Sorry. Sometimes I do that to you. Yep. You're exactly right. Sometimes people keep trophies.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. And now back to our episode.
So yeah, generally speaking, police jumped on it and really did that. This doesn't appear to be a case where, no evidence was collected, a scene was compromised, anything like that. Police jumped right on this, and they got state police involved immediately too.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did not hesitate investigating this, and they thoroughly investigated this case.
Yep, they did.
And
but generally speaking, there's really not too much to talk about when thinking about suspects. There's a few theories that people threw out there and were in newspaper articles very early on. The theories included a few different things. One theory included high school students. Go into why that's the case. A magazine salesman, which is a very far out there theory. 2 young people who had stolen a car in another town nearby that lived in town. And then Gary Schaefer.
unbelievable.
I know.
Gary Schaefer comes up again.
Yeah.
So, if you listen to our podcast, we have talked about Gary Schaefer before. They have had him to be a person of interest in several other cases.
I did have a little bit of a paragraph in here about Schaefer. I'll go into a little bit about the whole Schaefer thing, but
okay.
The theory about the high school students stems from there being a clearing behind Sylvia's house, being a common area for the local high school students and young adults to go party. So actually seems like a pretty plausible theory. There had actually been a party there the afternoon that Sylvia was murdered. The kids doing that right in back of Sylvia's house made her uneasy. She didn't like that type of activity. And she kept on finding empty beer cans thrown on her lawn and things like that. So, there's multiple reasons why she didn't like it. She knew it was underage, drinking and, possible questionable behavior happening back there. So it definitely made her uncomfortable.
It was her property. I'm sorry, I wouldn't want a lot of parties on the back of my in the back of my yard.
Yeah.
That's my property.
Yep.
I can see why she would get frustrated and upset.
So when police found out that one of those parties had occurred there the afternoon that Sylvia was murdered, obviously they started rounding up all the kids and questioning them. But do you think that they got anywhere?
No.
No. I mean, the kids weren't going to implicate themselves or anything like that. I mean, obviously they weren't caring about that at that point. And I'm pretty sure that that's what they communicated to like the parents and the kids and everything like that. Like that's whatever you're doing there, like we don't care about that at this point. We're focusing on this. But high school kids,
Yeah.
they really didn't. They weren't going to implicate themselves in anything in talking to police. So that's one theory, and I think that's one theory that, generally speaking, a lot of law enforcement and her son actually thinks is a really viable like route to continue going down.
I would.
Yeah.
I would definitely think that.
Yeah. The theory about the magazine salesman, this was simply just a new unknown person that had come into the area. Like he had just moved to the area and people didn't know him, so he was questioned. This is how small that town was.
He was probably thinking, what the heck did I get myself into?
He's probably thinking, I'm going to move out now. Yeah. So I mean, he was investigated. Nothing ever came of that. The two young people that had stolen the car, it was actually a police cruiser that they stole. Oh, kids will be kids, right? So just because they were involved in, that questionable activity or whatever, they were fully investigated. I think it was the timing of it and everything, and they were fully investigated. Nothing came of that. And then we get to Schaefer. Okay, so for those of you that don't know Gary Schaefer, this monster was responsible for murdering Catherine Richards, who was an 11-year-old girl from Springfield, Vermont. He also confessed to Teresa Fenton. His sick reign of terror took place between 1979 and 1983 in the Springfield, Vermont area. So simply because of the timing of those cases and when he was actually convicted of Catherine Richards' murder, I think anytime any body actually came up, Schaefer was actually investigated, because it's definitely thought that Schaefer was responsible for more that he never ended up confessing to, and we'll sort of never know unless some sort of DNA links him. Mm-hmm. It should be noted too that Schaefer was a rapist and a pedophile. All of his victims were young girls. So it's kind of unlikely that he would have a connection to Sylvia as well. But
yeah, I'd have to agree to that.
Yeah, me too. It makes you, it almost, the couple of articles that I found about the whole like, oh, is Schaefer part of this? The police actually seemed annoyed at the media asking them about that. And they're like, there's absolutely no links. Like just because he's a convicted murderer in Springfield, Vermont, does not mean he's responsible for.
Yeah, she does not fit his profile at all. His victim profile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sylvia is not anywhere in that profile whatsoever.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And then about 5 weeks after Sylvia's death, a tip came in about a car that was seen on Sylvia's road. Simply because of the timing that they were told on when this car was seen. So again, small town, unknown car. The police were trying to get information out. It was a very broad description, though, about what the car looked like. And they made sure and put it out there like, we're not considering this person even necessarily a suspect. We just want to talk to them about what they possibly saw, right? So potential witness, that sort of thing. It was, they actually approached it extremely well. Well, the media was trying to make a headline about, oh, possible car linked, da-da-da-da-da. Law enforcement was like, no, we just want to speak to this person, the possible owner of it, of this car that was this unknown car that was actually seen on her road that day in the afternoon. The car was described simply as a small, dark brown, possibly foreign make. I think later it was determined it was possibly a Honda, and possibly a hatchback. So, but nothing ever came of the car. I know you have to sit here and be like, especially in this specific case too, with police doing everything they can, roadblocks, house to house interviews, asking for tips, getting state police involved extremely early on, working round the clock. My heart breaks
Yeah,
for this case,
it really does. To do that much investigation and come up empty-handed.
Yeah.
Just so sad.
Yeah. So not a ton of, any leads or suspects really ever came in her case, but an interesting piece of information. Now, when I was digging, I was not expecting to find this, Jane.
No?
No, I was not expecting to find this at all. It pays to do a date range when you're researching
Yeah.
these cases too, because you all have heard us talk about this a ton, and I found the original article that proves it. So, Sylvia's case was actually part of the initial bi-state task force that was formed between Vermont and New Hampshire, and it was formed Monday, April 28th, 1986. Now, this is the task force that we always talk about for the Connecticut River Valley cases. That's what we had previously always called it. Now we know that they called it the Bi-State Task Force.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see everything that was listed that they were initially looking into, sort of grouping and paying attention to. So Sylvia's case was actually part of it. The other cases that were noted: Eva Morse, Bernice Courtemache, Ellen Freed, Elizabeth Critchley, Linda Moore, Joanne Dunham, obviously Sylvia. And then 2 other cases I had never, ever heard of, but it may be because I'm not sure if they were ever actually identified. There was a mention that they would review the case of a 20-year-old unidentified man whose body was found earlier that month in April, so April of 1986, behind a rest area off Route 12 in Charleston, New Hampshire, who died of a blow to the back of the head. And then there was also mention of the remains of a man in his late to mid 20s or mid to late 20s, found in a wooded section of Nelson, New Hampshire on April 7th, 1986. I lived in Nelson, New Hampshire for I don't even know how long. I never heard of this name.
Wow.
And Nelson's such a small town. It was crazy to see that. I was like, what? So Sylvia was actually part of that initial task force.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was weird too, because in the article it specifically called out that they weren't sure whether or not they would look at Heidi Martin's case within the task force team.
Yeah.
But that probably had to deal with Delbert, like the process that they were dealing with Delbert. Now, Delbert Tallman was tried for Heidi Martin's murder, but was acquitted.
Yes.
So that's probably the reason why they put that comment in there. So, yeah, that's all the information I got. What do you think about the task force thing?
I'm when I first read this, I was like, wow. Obviously there's some missing names on there. But they initially called it the Bi-State Task Force.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that means that task force worked between Vermont and New Hampshire.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
We have never got confirmation about that.
I got the article.
Yeah.
It was in the Valley News.
And that is the first time we have had confirmation for that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep. And so it was, it seems like, so, previously when we had talked about the Connecticut River Valley cases, we were like, well, of course they were going to end up announcing and doing something, because it was like 3 bodies found, boom, 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 like in succession. I didn't know about the rest of these bodies that were actually found in April too.
I did not either. I never heard about that.
Mhm. So,
Do we have names?
if I'll keep on digging on it, and I'll let you guys know.
Yeah.
Because I didn't in any of the articles that I found about that task force, because obviously I was still focusing on Sylvia, but if that unknown person that was found in April of 1986 behind the rest area off Route 12 in Charleston was ever identified, I'll let you guys know. We'll do another episode. Or if that man from Nelson that was found
Yeah.
in Nelson in the woods was identified. Yeah. I'll try and dig and do some research and see if I can't identify them.
And they were both in April of 86 that they were both found?
Yes, ma'am. I don't have an exact date for the man in Charlestown. It just says earlier in the month. So this was an article from April 28th. But the man in Nelson was found April 7th.
You don't hear the authorities talk about them at all.
No.
Except for this one piece right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
where that gives us something else to dig into.
It really does. And I have to be honest with you too, especially with how it's just kind of weird with the way, and maybe it's because of the way that Sylvia was attacked. And what the medical examiner said when I read that the guy from Charleston, New Hampshire, he was, blows to the back of the head, was found behind the rest area.
Yeah.
I was almost like, oh, this is interesting. So yeah.
And I think the only thing that why they wanted to connect Sylvia's case with the Connecticut River Valley cases or the investigation was because of the stabbings. Because she was stabbed so many times, or we suspect she was stabbed several times, but also because it was very similar to Linda Moore's.
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely seemed like in the article, what they were doing is they were listing all of the cases that, hadn't been solved yet. But they definitely did go into too that they were like dividing things into groups and groups of teams too. Obviously like Eva, Bernice, and Ellen were consistently grouped like into one group. I think strictly because of the timing. I think originally Sylvia and Elizabeth Critchley they had grouped into one, but they definitely weren't putting out there like these cases are definitely linked in that sort of thing. But they were publicly putting out there, our states are working together. It's very clear that we have a problem. And so we're pulling together all of our local and state resources. We're putting everything together. We have lots of bodies that are popping up. We have lots of missing people still.
Yeah.
They actually even put that in the article. And they're like, and so we're working together as best we can to share information to try and get these cases solved because it's, people were worried in all these small towns and communities.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Sylvia's case still remains unsolved. No suspects, no person of interest. So yeah, if you have information, now you're older. If you were at that party, come forward. If you have any little information, if you think you know something, come forward. Give the information to the authorities. Let's try to solve Sylvia's case. She deserves justice. It's very sad, and it's still unsolved.
Yeah, I am not sure that Sylvia has any advocates left. Either. So we're definitely taking up those reins. Please, 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 if you have any sort of information, any information about the ring, any more information about that car, like you're saying that you're older now, any information about that party, if you saw something, if you saw someone, even the littlest detail, please contact the cold case unit in New Hampshire and give them that information. Yeah.
I mean, even if you know something about someone that may have been involved and that person has since deceased, still come forward with the information. Let's get this case solved and closed. answers are so important. Especially, I imagine that community must still talk about this.
Mhm.
It's still such a small community. So, let's give that community some answers. It may be the smallest thing that come forward. You're not going to be implicated. Just come forward with the information. Let's get this case solved. She deserves that much. She deserves justice. Her murder was brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. Her murder was brutal.
Yes.
And she was an older lady, and she did not deserve this. Absolutely not.
No, she didn't.
No. So we'll have information in our notes about any contact information that you could use to come forward with something. Follow us, subscribe to us, follow us on our Facebook, Invisible Tears. Thank you for listening. And until next time.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Invisible Tears. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast to hear all future episodes. Click into our link tree too in the episode description to find and follow us on all our social medias. And it also links to our website, invisible-tears.com, where you can keep current on any events that may be coming up, read more about Jane and the team, and read more about all the Connecticut River Valley unsolved cases. Evil may exist in this world, but we will not let it win. See you next episode.